America witnessed two more mass shootings last week. In Wisconsin, a gunman opened fire at a software company, shooting 4 co-workers before police shot and killed him. The 43-year-old gunman's motive, unknown. In Maryland, a woman shot and killed 3 people, injured others in her workplace before turning the gun on herself. These crimes are just the latest in a long line of mass shootings that have happened in recent years, including, of course, the February 14th shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. In that tragic incident, a 19-year-old entered the campus and killed 17 students and staff members and injured scores of others. Following that mass shooting, students launched the March for Our Lives movement and joined hundreds of thousands in protest against the country's gun laws. For a while, it seemed like America's gun legislation might actually change, but there is little talk of such things now. On the campaign trail ahead of the midterms, few candidates talk about the NRA, gun laws, or restricting access to assault weapons. What happened, and where does that movement started in Parkland go now? I recently spoke to Cameron Kasky about this. He is a survivor of the Parkland, Florida shooting, and he's co-founder of March for Our Lives. He's launching a new initiative, which we also spoke about. Here is that interview. Please watch. What's changed since then?
Not enough. I'd like to think that the conversation has shifted a bit. I'd like to think a lot of different people are looking at what legislation we could pass to make this country a safer place in different lights. A lot of people are exploring different efforts, whether they be clearly one-sided or relatively bipartisan. But, you know, while we haven't seen a lot of legislation that I know a lot of my friends and I have been interested in seeing, we are seeing a shift in how we approach this issue.
Is it being widely discussed in the midterms?
I've heard it a lot in midterm discussions. I mean, but back in the beginning of this, maybe through the March and a bit after, I thought this was going to be a one-issue election. Mm-hmm. And then, as a reflective commentary on our times, everything else pops up, and it's as if this midterms are more important than ever.
It's one day breaking news, and then it goes away.
That's the thing. You know, if you watch the news and are looking at social media, and then you go 2 days without it, it looks like the world isn't burning down. But, you know, if your eyes are on the screens, the way everybody presents everything, every other week there's another storm that'll change everything.
Where were you that day?
I was at school. I was reading, I remember at the time, I was at a rehearsal for a musical I was in, and I had just read John Walsh's Tears of Rage. And I was a bit emotional that day because I said I couldn't imagine how somebody could lose a child like this. And then, unfortunately, we saw a loss that was...
Where were you physically, and where was the shooting? You know, give me a description.
Oh, I was a couple hundred yards away. I had picked up my younger brother, who is in the special needs class, and they get dismissed a bit earlier than everyone else. So I would pick him up and take him to my drama class. He'd have a lot of fun. People gave him attention. He loves attention. And we found ourselves in the parking lot because there was a fire alarm, and this kid next to me said, "Oh, there's a shooter." And I said, it's a pretty jerk thing to say, don't you think? It's not very funny. This thing happens. And then maybe 25 minutes later, we realized the situation we were in.
Did you know some of the kids that were killed?
Yes.
Has your life's been changed since then?
Well, I mean, everyone who's been affected by this has to live in a reality where everything that ever happens for the rest of our lives only happened because the worst case scenario, you know, our realities are flipped. We can't truly go back to anything because no matter what, everything's different.
You spoke at the March for Our Lives rallies, right? Why did you decide to get so involved? Because, I mean, a lot of people would have said, I want to forget about it.
Sure, and I don't know what the right decision is. What I could tell you is that I was born in 2000, and I grew up on these mass shootings. You know, this era of them speeding up, becoming more frequent and deadly is something I'm very accustomed to, and I'd seen it so often, and I'd been in those situations where somebody referenced Sandy Hook or Las Vegas in a room, and everything got quiet. And I thought, maybe after what happened at our school, people can hear Stoneman Douglas and not feel melancholy, but think, you know what, they were the ones who made a big difference here. That was the catalyst. Maybe we got real change after this one. But, you know, when is enough enough?
Since it fades, what keeps your enthusiasm?
You know, It's very hard to keep my enthusiasm with everything that's going on. I've learned a lot of lessons since starting the march, particularly that I'm not interested in parties anymore. I've learned that a lot of our politicians are in it for the wrong reasons, and a lot of them are good public servants, but I'd say the reason that I'm excited is I think my generation is headed in the right direction. I think our principles are forming in better ways than perhaps, preceding generations, because we had seen what corruption can do to a generation. We had seen what's going on in our politics right now that maybe caught some people by surprise.
Parents supporting you?
Yes. It's difficult because there's no real precedent for this. I mean, how many situations are there when a bunch of kids go up and are thrown around TV studios because their school got shot up and they were advocating for something? I'm very grateful for my parents. I'm very grateful for a lot of the other parents because there's no guidebook for this.
Is your goal to change the Second Amendment?
Here's my view on that. I believe that semi-automatic rifles are not necessary in our country right now. But I also think that when I'm an adult, I'm going to protect my family. And perhaps I'll get a permit for a small firearm to use in my home. There are several in my home right now. My father's a reserve police officer. I don't want to mess with the Second Amendment too much. I really would love to add maybe 2 lines to the NFA, the National Firearms Act, restricting one more weapon. But I'm certainly not the type of person who says that we don't need a Second Amendment, because we do.
Has President Trump disappointed you?
President Trump he's a bit predictable because he's all about appeasing his base. I'm sure you remember the era where Trump was a New York City Democrat. He was. And now he's doing whatever he thinks is going to get him the votes he needs. I'm sure Trump believes in gun control. I'm sure he thinks it works. But the point is, if he knows that the 2A defenders are going to vote for him in spades, he'll do whatever it takes to make them happy.
Are you starting a new organization called Middle Ground? Tell me about it.
So what I'm trying to do is prevent a lot of young people from making mistakes that I made, rhetorically and personally. And I think to a time when I thought that anyone who disagreed with me was in it for the bad reasons. If you didn't agree with me on guns, you didn't care when kids died. If you didn't agree with me on X, whatever it may be, I thought that there was no way somebody could not share their views with me and be a good person.
People who didn't like the other side, you dismiss them.
Exactly, and I learned the left and the right attack each other's worst arguments. They really do, and there's no civil discussion, there's no room for civil discussion when all we're doing is trying to beat the other person. We're not looking for conclusions, we're looking for little victories. I mean, I saw the North Korea summit and I wanted it to fail because I wanted President Trump to fail. And then I thought, would I rather have a Trump victory and a denuclearized North Korea, or a Trump loss and North Korea to have nukes? It was this filthy rhetoric that just seeped into my brain that made me root against my country if it meant President Trump could look bad.
So you want Middle Ground to bring people together or not be so harsh with those you disagree with? How's it going to work?
Well, we're not asking people to agree. We're not. I don't think we need to. I think disagreement's incredibly important, but we're trying to have people change their approach. Because, I used to think if you don't agree with me on guns, you didn't care when kids died. And then I met that man in Texas who has a semi-automatic rifle in his home because that's what he uses to defend his family. And we don't see eye to eye on it, but he's not some guy who shrugs off the murder of children. He's a guy who has different perspectives. And the hardest lesson I learned as a 17-year-old boy was, I don't know everything. And that one got me real good, because I was dead set on the fact that everything I said was gospel. But no, I have a lot to learn. And I encourage a lot of other people to stop thinking they're the expert and embark on a journey.
How do people get involved in Middle Ground?
We're working on just how we want to reach out to people. We're looking at media publications that are very open with what they're explaining. So if we have a website, for example, and there's a page on abortion, we have a 5-minute video explaining the right's perspective on abortion and a 5-minute video explaining the left's perspective on abortion, and then encourage you to get what you want out of it. Because when I go on the internet right now, I don't know where the bias is. It's very often embedded. I mean, there's sites like MSNBC or the Daily Wire that are both pretty open about what they are. But very often, in big media, it's not them telling you what happened, it's them explaining to you what happened their own way.
You have a website?
We're working on it. We're in preliminary stages right now, really trying to feel out, get advice. That's why I reached out to you. You've been a consistent voice for not hating someone just because you don't see eye to eye. And, we want to figure out the best way we could do this.
I've never hated anyone because You contributed to a book written by the March for Our Lives founders coming out next month. The book is entitled Glimmer of Hope. What did you write about?
I wrote about the beginning because the March for Our Lives started when all these great young people from my school got together in my home. My mother was away because she had suffered some personal losses recently, and I said, and the rest of my family agreed, just go on a short vacation. Do this for yourself. My mother spent so much time doing things for other people, so while she was away, my house was empty, and we all met up there. And I told everybody what it was like to have basically a 24-hour consistent train station of a home where we'd be going to and from interviews, discussing our points together, helping each other through the pain. I mean, that's, people said, how can you guys get on TV and talk about this days after your friends were killed? And it was hard, but the point is we had each other, and we were very much a crutch for each other.
I bet you think about it every day.
The thing is, I don't think about it when it might be appropriate. I don't take a second, sit down and think about everything that happened. It always just creeps up on me at the worst time. I always think about it when I'm really trying to focus on something else and I hear something or a reference to something or other and it reminds me of everything. And it also reminds me that everybody from Stoneman Douglas, really most of the people from Parkland, it's going to be really hard for us to get back to anything that was a normal life. Everything that'll ever happen again happened because a nightmare.
When will we start to hear about middle ground?
I'm looking into talking about it early next year. I definitely want the midterms to run their course, and I don't want to take any attention from the important things we should be focusing on. But, this midterms, they're going to be a circus. I've already got my popcorn ready.
Are you going to when do you finish school? Are you finished?
No, I'm a senior. I'm finishing online. And I'm hoping to be ready to graduate by January, but chances are I'll be in May with everybody else.
Good luck, man.
I need it.
Keep in touch. We'll do a lot on this.
I appreciate that.
Middle ground is coming.
And it's coming fast.